Welcome to the Funded Now What podcast with your host, Andrew Lee Miller. Brought to you by Growth Experts. You are in store for a chat about funding, marketing, startups, and all things growth.
All right. Hello and welcome back to the Funded Now What podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lee Miller, also known as Andrew Startups. You're in store for a really great chat with a really cool startup that's just raised $3 million to pioneer marketing and tech in a brand new industry that does neither of those things. So, I'm excited to introduce you to Pascal. He's the co-founder and CEO of Manukai. Manukai, if I can say it right, if I pronounced it correctly, is a software platform and an AI startup that is innovating in the manufacturing space. Let me see if I can get this right, Pascal. Specifically with the development and production of high precision metal tools that affect every other potential manufacturing industry. There's like specific tools that need to be made to create everything else in the world, and it's very cumbersome and difficult. And this guy has created some AI that does it for him. Is that the right intro?
That's quite good. Yes, it's almost I think maybe even better than how I could do it.
That's my job. So I'm glad in 2 minutes of looking at his company, I did it better than him. That's why I do marketing, bro. So Pascal's joining us all the way from Zurich, Switzerland. If you haven't had a chance to go there, you definitely should. It's pretty much the most beautiful country in the world, and people are the happiest I've ever seen on the planet. But that doesn't lead itself to really wanting to work really hard on a startup. So I do know a couple other founders there that I've met over the years. But there's so much like outdoors and beautiful stuff to do. I would find it very difficult to be on the computer every day. So Pascal, thanks for joining us. But tell us what led you to starting this before we get into it.
Well, the story is very easy. We did study at ETH Zurich, which is, I think, a world-known university, a top tier when it comes to AI robotic research.
That's true.
I mean, what you typically find right after doing such a PhD is you basically find a good job at Google, Facebook, where of course you earn a lot of money, but especially in our field where we did a lot of AI for engineering, that's not really the purpose, I guess, you're looking for.
Right.
For after learning all these tools to maybe kind of change the world to the better in something that is related to engineering and science. And yeah, that was basically the reason why we said, okay, if there is no AI in manufacturing, that's a gap. And that's a gap that with our skill, with our technology, we can close. And therefore, let's start the company.
Amazing. That is a really beautiful, simple origin. If you see a problem that nobody else is fixing, and you think you can fix it better than anyone else, build a company around that is basically what you're saying. Love it.
Exactly.
I always see that startups that are originally founded just to make money fail very often. And startups that are originally created to solve a problem that nobody else seems to be solving succeed. And if that is like the basis that you're building your company on, you're going to be able to work those 18 hours a day. You're going to be able to be resilient and not give up. And, if money is the goal, then maybe when you get a little bit of money, you just give up on it. Or when it doesn't make money quickly, you give up on it. So that's really awesome. Thanks for that. But okay, give us a better description about Manukai. Did I pronounce it right?
It's Manukai, but
okay,
perfect.
So that's pretty good.
It's pretty good. So it's a combination of manufacturing and Kaizen, which Kaizen is a Japanese principle that basically means a continuous or implies continuous improvement of production. And that's, I think, fundamentally what we stand for, why we got incorporated. And what we do now today, right? I mean, of course, you cannot just broadly solve all the problems at once, but you need to find this one wedge that you can basically enter the market, and which is kind of the big enough problem to even get things started. And for us, it was CNC machining. So CNC machines have been like around since the early inception of the computer. It's really one of, can I say, first industrial use case of computers. And it allows you to control tools at a very, very high precision. So here we're talking about micrometer precision, which is like smaller than a hair. So really stuff that you barely see. And because you can move the tools at this precision, you can, of course, also cut material using these tools at this precision. And this is important. I mean, the Swiss use case, of course, is watches, right? If you think about the beautiful Rolex or whatever, this kind of thing is moving at a very high precision, no friction. It just works. And even after leaving it in the shelf for 3 years, it will still show the right time.
Yeah.
Right? And this is only made possible because you can cut these tiny little wheels, etc., in the watch at this precision. But it's not just the watch, it's just one example, but same applies for cars, planes, any machine basically at the core has some mechanical aspect that you need basically to produce high precision parts on CNC machines. Now, what the problem with CNC machining is that you still need to translate the 3D design. So the kind of idea that the designer has, how a part should look like, how precise a part should be cut, into instructions for the machine. So these machines is not, I think currently the misconception with 3D printing a little bit came up, right? That everyone believes I can just throw the 3D model at the machine and the machine knows what to do. But it's not printing, it's cutting, and therefore there is a lot of complexity coming from how you define these instructions to cut these parts. And that's really where we come in, where we basically provide AI technology to make this better, faster, and yeah, basically
the instruction side of it. So it's not actually any hardware or machinery, it's the software behind the instructions that teach the machine how to do it.
Exactly. Yes, we are a software first company, a pure software company, AI first, pure software company. And yeah, in the end, we don't build the hardware. Yes.
Love it. No, that's great, because that would add a lot more complexities to the company if you were in hardware right now, especially with tariffs and stuff. But I still was really excited to get you on the show because, you know, it's very hard in 2025 to find people building things for industries that haven't been innovated since the dawn of computers, you know? And so found you and I was like, oh, this is cool. But that also means that there is a tremendous amount of money and effort spent on educating consumers and the customers, not consumers, but the end customer for this product. And the older the industry, the older school, as we say, the more old school they are, the harder it is to explain to them AI, software, you know, anything like that. Their eyes glaze over. I mean, Swiss watches may be a different thing. You know, those companies are innovating a lot faster, but you go to, you know, outside of major, you know, like really well-known industry, and there's things happening in the background. I know I mentioned to you before we started recording that I have some family members that work with an Italian pipe manufacturing company, like the largest in the world, $1 billion company. And they still use like Outlook. Everything's done in Excel, and they have never updated their website since the 90s. So I guess that's one thing I'm really excited to chat about, is how hard it is to get in front of them and how we need to growth hack that. But before we get into that, you raised $3 million. How'd you do it? And what advice do you have off the top of your head for other, specifically European founders? It's very different than raising here in the United States. Was this your first time?
It was the first time, yes. I mean, I think it just, well, I posted today a post that I think summarized it quite well. It's really like, take every no as a like fuel to grow even further, because a no means a question that you cannot yet answer. But I mean, I would say as a founder, you're in a unique position where you have this kind of dedication, this kind of, you see the purpose behind what you're doing. So you have the will, you have the power to kind of step beyond basically this like uncertainty, this question that maybe an investor says, no, I cannot invest because of X, Y, Z, right? And that allows you to really push forward. So I think it's really important to just kind of keep pushing, because in the end, right, one says you only need one yes, and then then things fly.
Yeah, love that. That's a very good motivational speech for anything that people are doing, whether job searching, going up to a guy or a girl at a bar. Every no eventually leads to a yes. I used to work with this sales company that Growth Experts partnered with. We would like share clients with each other. And this guy, Ned, shout out to Ned. he would always say, I love when people tell me no, because all my data shows me that after every 4 no's, I get a yes. So if I get a no, I know I'm getting closer to a yes, and I just have to keep hunting. So that's really great advice, which brings me to my next question. And I kind of stopped asking this lately because the answer was always the same. But how many no's did you get before a yes? Then did you track that? As a data kid, nerdy guy, no offense with the glasses, you probably know the exact number of how many investors you talked to. How much was it?
I checked it just before. I think in total in our CRM we have like something like 262 contacts,
Oh,
which means that's a number of people you talk to, right? And then the question boils down, okay, how many funds it is. But I mean, again, in the post I shared this morning is like I estimate more than 150 no's before getting the yes that now lead to this round.
that might be a record. That might be a record, and it's obvious now why your first recommendation is be resilient, because 150 no's. I mean, most people that I talk to that are unsuccessful in fundraising, I go, how many companies did you speak to, or how many funds did you speak to? And they're like 10 or 12, and they all hated what I was working on. I'm like, that's nothing. Get your ass back out there. And you have an exact example right here in front of you of a startup that was able to raise 3 million after over 150 no's. And I think if people recognize that is the main difference between success and failure, is just not giving up. There's only 2 potential outcomes. You either you fail, or you succeed. And you can only fail a finite number of times. You have to iterate. And so I'm imagining that you hit the nail right on the head. Like every no is because of something. I have a friend that's job searching in San Francisco right now. And I was like, did you get that robotics job yesterday? And he's like, no. I'm like, why? Why'd they say no? He's like, I don't know. I'm like, you have to follow up and find out why, and then fix that question, exactly like Pascal said. So 150 no's. What did you learn along the way that you had to change along those no's?
I mean, I think for me somehow, I mean, now that I read or listened to the Lean Startup book, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I heard, okay, building a startup is all about like maximizing the number of learnings you get per time unit, right? And
Mm-hmm.
to me, this was kind of something that I intuitively did from the beginning. So we went out basically looking for investors with like, yeah, barely an idea at our hand. So I think for us, it was kind of just the whole process that we always kind of try to go out, share what we are doing, share our thoughts, get feedback on that, and iterate like that. Because I mean, in the end, building a company is not like solving a math problem where you just have to sit down in a dark place and think about it
Yeah.
for some hours, but it's something where you have to find this spot where like kind of the average person finds, or the average client, the average investor, whoever finds what you're doing interesting, right? And this is something that you only find out by experimenting, by going out, by testing,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, basically maximizing your learning, as they say, right?
Yeah. No, it's totally true. And I think like that's why being a founder, like the number one skill is resilience, really. Like it's just not giving up. That's like almost 100% of it. Obviously, there's some marketing abilities, and the ability to take risks and the ability to push through is just as big as that. But I love that what I guess you're saying there is, you didn't need to read the book. You were already behaving like the lean startup, but it's just a desire to learn. And I think that's actually the biggest gap or difference between Silicon Valley and Europe, is like that lack of a fear of failure, and the understanding that failure is good because it's the greatest teacher. I've worked with a lot of startups in Europe, and they have like this general like fear of failure and fear of looking bad or fear of making mistakes. Whereas in America, we're just like, we don't care. We know we're dumb. We know we make mistakes. We know that we're different than the rest of the world. Sorry to the Americans I'm offending with that. But if you travel and you live abroad, you'll see the difference very quickly. And so, that's why I think it takes you more calls. Did you raise from Swiss VCs or international?
Well, Swiss funds, yes. I mean, or at least the one fund is located in LA, but is focusing exclusively on the Swiss market. The other is a Swiss fund. Yeah, and then a bunch of angel investors, which of course we also sourced locally. But
Okay.
yeah, I mean, what you're saying is completely true, and I think maybe that's what I took back from the time in Boston, right? That I realized that the kind of the American way of thinking of being is so much more open and embracing the situation instead of being like, I don't know, reserved and thinking and considering the risk and then maybe not making the move, and then the
Yeah,
situation is gone, right? And then you miss your
absolutely.
opportunity.
Yeah. I don't think Americans realize that that is our actual one true skill over everybody else, is that we're way more fearless, except for leaving the country. Americans are very scared to leave the country compared to anywhere I've ever seen. But we generally take more risks, and I think it's a cultural thing. But Silicon Valley is even like the apex of that. Like, as
Mhm.
before I ever lived here, um, I jumped from startup to startup because either startup fails or a startup grows bigger than needing me to be there. I'm kind of like the first 12 months of marketing is my sweet spot. And so I had a resume, or a CV, as you would say, full of working with many different projects. And internationally, I would work with companies. They'd be like, we don't want to work with someone that leaves a company every 12 months. In San Francisco, they're like, absolutely, that's amazing. You switch companies so much. You have so much more experience than the average person. And it's just like this total different mindset shift. And mindset tends to be really important, which is what Pascal's saying here. He had a different mindset towards the nose than anybody else. And I think that's amazing. That's awesome. With the investors that you spoke to, did they have any knowledge or experience in manufacturing, or was that not necessary? It was just like AI investors, or what was the targeting for you?
I mean, of course, you look into industrial tech investors and try to find also investors that are like, well, look into, say, deep tech companies, I would call it, right? Because I mean,
Mhm.
in the end, right, our origin is from the university, from a PhD. So I think we bring a lot of in-depth knowledge, and we are also still technical founders. So we want to build a great technology. And I think that's a completely different game than if you want to just build a website and then attract like a gazillion of visitors in order to kind of, well, something that you can, let's be a bit brutal, set up in a weekend, right? This is
Yeah.
kind of completely contrary to what we are doing, where we really like now, I don't know, since a year researching, developing a technology that I think no one can just copy on the side. And I think that's something that you need to consider in your investor, because if the investor has no acceptance for you maybe being a bit slower with the launch because you really need to kind of first fix the technical problem, then this leads tension, and that's definitely not something you want to have.
That's great advice, which leads me again to my next question. Who in the company knows manufacturing? All of you guys are technical AI dudes or girls or ladies. Who has the industry experience? Because with this industry, what I do know is you do need to have somebody from the inside that knows the industry to be able to communicate with those people. You can't just be AI founders trying to talk to someone who hasn't innovated in 100 years. Do you have that internally?
Yes and no. I mean, we yes did hire a senior developer that is from the industry and therefore knows a bit the inner working of the technical integrations we have to do, which I think is very important because these are legacy systems, so it's not something you kind of get
Yeah.
you teach at the university today.
Yeah.
But I think the language, the lingo, the problem is something that I think goes hand in hand with these 150 no's from investors. Is that we really kind of also did, I think, more than 200 interviews with the industry before locking into these specific use cases, these specific
Wow.
verticals. So it was us basically going out with our kind of knowledge about AI. And then, of course, you have these hype topics like predictive maintenance and IoT, whatever. And then, I mean, you as a kind of someone that understands how AI works and what AI is capable of, you can basically challenge these a little bit and go to companies, talk with them about what data do you have available or how do you currently do stuff. And then you realize that maybe a lot of these kind of say seemingly low-hanging fruits are not even close to being ripe or maybe not even there. And then you also have to iterate, right? So I think what we did over the course of a year is really validating the market and getting basically expert in what AI in manufacturing means in order to identify the vertical. And now kind of, I think at some point we spoke the language, and that allowed us also to kind of develop or at least ideate the solution, communicate it. And then once we realized uh, everyone agrees on the problem, everyone agrees that this can be the right solution. Only then we started actually building
Love
and
it.
founded the company.
Love it. I mean, literally, you should write a book already. These are all things that are written in many famous books. That we call that building alongside your customers. And many times when I've been at successful companies, they're not sure what they're going to build. They know there's a problem, and they just talk to customers. Hey, what can we do that you can't do internally? And that's amazing. And then you can honestly get LOIs or letters of intent to work with you. And that is an amazing thing to show to investors. Hey, we have met with these 200 companies. They all have this problem. We met with them. This is how we can solve it. And they're all interested in paying for it already. They've signed this LOI. And like you said earlier with investors, that's one question. How are they going to make money that they can check off the box? Who's going to pay them? Another question that they'll check off the box. And you don't even have to build anything yet to get that. You just have to meet with them. And so I think that's super smart, but still not easy to get those meetings. I mean, you're talking 250 investor meetings, 200 potential client meetings over the past year, I think you said. So that's over one meeting per day, 7 days a week. How did you get those meetings without the industry? Like, these are not people that are just checking their email all the time. You're going to the warehouse, the manufacturing center, and knocking on the door? Or how did you get those 200 meetings set up?
So, I mean, we did two strategies. So the first strategy was really about leveraging umbrella organizations, right? I think the same applies to the US, or at least I assume that you have these kind of organizations that where companies in the same space basically meet. I don't know, the same. Of course, it's true for startups, but as here in Switzerland and in Germany, there is associations, especially for manufacturing companies, how they work together. And via these, you can they typically have some articles and some stuff where you basically get the pre-qualified lead, right? Because the company that likes to expose and tell the story about how they did whatever innovation in the AI or digitalization space, these are the people you want to talk to. So we did basically that. So we reached out to those companies that really published cases and said, wow, we saw your article. Let's talk about what you really do and how this went. That's one side of the thing, and the other thing is, again, right? I mean, I think today it's largely undervalued how much more of a personal connection you can do via phone. So I think just calling someone is so much better than writing, I don't know, yet another AI generated LinkedIn or email.
Yeah.
Because once you have the person on the phone and you're being honest, well, I'm this AI researcher fresh from school. I mean, I have no idea what you guys are doing, but I somehow feel the urge to solve something that you have as a problem. I want to bring this technology to your hands. And then, I mean, why would they say no, right? You're basically offering them your knowledge, your, I don't know, many years at university, to talk to them. And then, well, you get a very open response and they start explaining, yeah, look, this is what we do and that's why we are doing it. And then, well, if you're lucky like we were, you arrive at this one a guy that at some point tells you, look, guys, if you want to solve something really, really, really painful, solve the CNC programming aspects, because the poor guy downstairs is still doing it the same way I was doing it 30 years ago. And that cannot be, right? Because imagine the computer 30 years ago was like this huge box that barely had any user interface, right? And now imagine that this the technology advantage is so high now, but in this space, it's still like 30 years ago.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, man, you are giving gold away here. Usually I bring people on, they tell me a little bit about their company, they share one piece of advice, but you're sharing marketing advice, product development advice, fundraising advice. This is amazing. And I want to focus in on what I can do for you, but that's totally right, man. I mean, you do make it sound easier than it is. And a lot of people that come on the show are product and engineering founders, and generally introverted, PhD researchers like you are not usually people that can pick up the phone and call someone and immediately pitch something to them. And these are not easy to talk to people, even in Switzerland, people that are running manufacturing companies. Like you said, they've been doing something the same way for 30 years. They're very averse to change. So I think the skill here is Pascal is used to being punched in the face by the market, hang up, no, no, no. And so he makes it sound easy, but you do have to navigate through the people that hang up and get pissed off. But eventually you will get the guy that's like, hey, I know the problem you should solve. It's downstairs in the CNC machine. And then that is where you build your whole company from. You just have to be comfortable to be able to get through all those no's. But yeah, I mean, nothing as powerful as just picking up the phone. I mean, it's different for different things and different pitches. And I can imagine that if you say AI to someone that's running a manufacturing company for 30 years without innovation, they're like, what? Because, in America, which is, I would say, leading the AI revolution, depending on the week that this podcast goes live, we only have about 5% of businesses using AI, at least admittedly right now. And that's probably changed since this report came out like 6 months ago, but still maybe 10, maybe 15%. So you go all the way down to manufacturing and it's, 0.1% of maybe the individual employee is figuring out how to do their job easier. But and so that's a word that I think scares a lot of people. So I would love to hear your pitch, your actual recorded phone call that got to that. But at the end of the day, I think it's just being comfortable doing hundreds of calls before you actually find the result. Would you say that was right?
Yeah, and I think you put it nicely, right? It all sounds easy once you kind of pause the hill. I think the biggest mistake we did, of course, yes, I think doing the calling is important, but I think what we didn't do and which kind of is the biggest learning I had so far, besides all the things that somehow intuitively went right, which is always easy in retrospective. But I think the biggest advice would be track the data. Like, even if you're talking to people, this is data, right? And you need to store it, you need to keep it, you need to log it, you need to put it somewhere such that it doesn't get lost. And that's something that I think we did completely wrong. I told you, right? We did this, I don't know, over 200 interviews with companies, but imagine that's 1 year of work. And of course, we developed the idea, we got the conviction, we knew, okay, that's what we're going to do. But then, of course, you enter due diligence with an investor, and he's like, okay, show me that data for these 200 calls. And you're like, well, we talked, and then, we developed our idea further, but we didn't really track that. And
You got to track it.
that's you got to track it. Really make sure, and also especially if you're a technical person, it sounds like so. Yeah, it's not like hardcore data that you get out of a simulation, that you get out of whatever kind of model that you're doing, but it's such valuable data, and you really need to make sure, especially as a technical founder. That's our learning. Track it,
100%.
because otherwise nobody's gonna. How should he believe it to you that you really did these 200 interviews if you cannot really show evidence for it?
Yeah, no, I just believe you that you did it because I can see the conviction. But whenever I do my keynotes at conferences and stuff, usually focused on bootstrap founders and how to get some traction before you get any money, the first thing I say is you have to be tracking everything. And I'll be asking people, who here is not confident what their KPIs are and what their metrics are as of today? And there'll always be 10 people. I'm like, don't do anything else that I'm going to say in this talk, because you won't get any ROI, or what I now call, before you get the money, I call it ROTI, return on your time investment. So you need to be able to track your return on time investment. And there's quantitative data in the form of how many people answer the phone, how many minutes you take on the phone, how many calls you did. And then there's qualitative data in the sense of, what are the unique things that people said that I can write down the notes after every call. And I'll give a shout out to one of my clients, Sembly.ai is a tool that will even record your phone calls. You can just turn it on your laptop while you're making a phone call on speakerphone, and it'll record and transcribe and then make notes from all of it. And using a tool like that, you can then, take the aggregate of all of those meetings, and which it has a generative AI component as well, where you can communicate with it. Hey, I did 200 calls. What was the main reason people weren't interested? And then it can look through all of it and parse through it and tell you. So I think we're living in a world where we have so many incredible tools that track it for you. You're so much weaker without data. So that's really a great point. And dude, overall, I just really love your tenacity. How old are you?
I'm 34. turning
34. Okay, so a
35.
little
Yeah.
older than the average student in America. You're like,
Yes.
you talk about university a million times. I'm like, no 20-year-old has this kind of experience, but that makes sense. Okay. The little scraggly beard gives it away. You're a little older, but awesome, dude. Well, I want to jump into giving you value and talking about how to scale this company and giving you some marketing advice. But I'm going to be honest, I think you fucking know what you have to do already. So hopefully I can
Maybe,
create some
hopefully.
golden nuggets for you, because this has been an amazing interview already. Tell me, what stage are you at now? You've raised the money. Where's the money going to go? And like, how much are you going to put towards marketing and customer acquisition? And what are you doing so far in that area that we can talk about?
Sure. So, well, the money mainly goes into development. I
Of
mean,
course.
we basically, well, raise the money because I think we managed to validate the technology. So we are able to show that our kind of idea works, that we can treat the model and do the AI the way we planned doing it. And now it's basically an integration question. So we need to kind of really, and that's, I think, our kind of user-centric view. We want to integrate it so deeply in the basically existing solution that companies are using, that for them it's like really seamless. It's kind of like, I usually take the example of autocomplete in a browser, right? It's nothing that you ask for, nothing that you downloaded, but suddenly your browser remembers your email, and of course you use it, because who likes typing his email address,
Right.
right? And that's the spirit that we want to have. So mainly it's development. What we did on a kind of commercial side, so we onboarded the late co-founder that brings valuable experience in the market. I think he was at the startup in the manufacturing, or even more specifically in the CNC machining space.
Oh,
So
wow.
he knows a little bit about the market, and the man, he has been in sales and business development for quite some time. So he also brings the knowledge about how to implement metrics and KPIs. And so what we're doing now is really we set up finally solve that problem. We set up our HubSpot to really track the data, like how much time you spend with each client in each phase, that we have like standardized basically while sales material for each step. Really validate currently, that's kind of, I think, going to be the biggest portion, really validate the persona, right? Who do we need to target in order to and how can we get to these people, right? I think these are the core questions we are currently fighting with, because
Mm-hmm.
as you said initially, right, it's a special market. I mean, CNC machining is that something that every big company in the manufacturing space does at some point in their value chain. But then, I mean, as a startup, you get to the, say, venture clienting unit, and these, say, innovative divisions in these big manufacturing corporates are so far away from the operations or from the actual shop floor where the guy is standing at the machine and doing the job, that
Mm-hmm.
it's super hard to find the path and connect the dots, right? Because the innovation guy is the one that will guide you through the commercial aspects, make sure that you get into commercial agreement, although you're not yet certified and whatever, and you cannot be a normal, let's say, supplier. But the person validating your value proposition is the guy on the shop floor. So kind of, I think matching these two is currently a big challenge,
Okay.
and something that we are actively working to solve.
Okay.
And yeah,
I think
so
I think we can talk a little bit about that. So
mhm,
when you have like a multi-layered sales process, and especially with something so highly technical and difficult for people to understand, like you mentioned earlier, you're driven by the problem. That's your wedge to get into the company. But
mhm,
I recommend usually a top-down approach, which is
mhm,
not going to like the guy on the floor or the person that's like the innovation specialist. It's the final decision maker that decides whether this fits into the company's roadmap for the year. Because
mhm,
what happens when we go bottoms up, even the innovation guy loves it. It's kind of like a recruiter when you're looking at a new job or something. The recruiter loves you, tells you you're perfect for this job, interviews you for 2 hours, promises you the world, and then it gets to the final decision maker and they're like, no, we don't have the money for that person, or and then it cuts it off. So it wastes a lot of your time. it's good to build relationships with those innovation people. But at the end of the day, if the C-level person, the business owner, I mean, a lot of these manufacturing companies have like a legitimate family owning them for like 3 generations or something.
Mm-hmm.
If that person is not interested in AI and what you're doing, then it's going to get killed, I think. And you can correct me if I'm wrong. Whereas if you can go call that person, walk into their office and explain to them how they can kill all the competition by using these AI tools fat before anyone else, they're going to force everyone else below them to work with you, no matter how difficult it is. And so I think that's how I would go. You get a lot lower response rate with LinkedIn outreach, email outreach, phone calls with these C-level people. But when you do get them on the phone, as you said, or where you do get their attention, they have the ability to trickle down everything very quickly to the rest of the org. Does that make sense?
That's a good point. Yes, I think that. But the issue with that, or the problem I would raise with that, is that okay, that works if you are like a company that exclusively does, say, CNC machines. And yes, there is thousands of CNC machine shops out there, and I think yes, there the only way to go is call the manager, tell the manager what you're doing, make the manager fall in love, and then because you're having such a great technical solution, that his worker, who is going to be the expert that can judge whether what you're doing is really making sense, is going to follow anyways. But what I meant with the problem is like, let's take, I don't know, Lockheed Martin, whatever, right? It's a company that doesn't just do machining, but it's like a multinational corporate that is like a huge thingy with like many thousands of employees. Now, there, right, the person who you want to talk to in the end to validate what you're promising can make sense and is really useful is the guy on the shop floor. But the person that does the decision is like, I don't know,
10
20.
layers above him.
Exactly. And then there is this, how do you solve this dispatchment? It's really hard, right? Because it's like there is such a huge space in between, and these
Well, I would
people
say it doesn't
often.
fucking matter. I would say I would still go to that high up person and tell them this is a problem. They only care about the bottom line of the company. So if your solution is going to save them millions, make them millions, they will go 20 layers down and tell that person you have to do this because they have bosses too. The person at the top, you know who the boss is of the CEO? The shareholders in the company. And so if I can show that I just saved the company $30 million and you make it easy for me to look that good to my shareholders, then I will go all the way down to the shop floor and be like, fucking listen to this guy, you know? And so I think that maybe, you know, it's a spray and pray approach, we call it. So you want to try bottoms up, you want to try top down, you want to try the shop floor guy, you want to change the messaging. But if, at the end of the day, the problem has to be solving something. I mean, your solution has to be saving millions or making millions for the C level to care about it. If it's not, then it's a little bit above the shop floor guy. It could be director or manager, but the guy on the shop floor is going to love it because he's experiencing the problem. So you might win. He might be the champion, but if you're telling me that that's been a problem, I would say don't continue for 150 no's, or because your company will die wasting, you know, a year with each potential customer. So you got to try different layers, different levels of outreach at different layers. And then there are other ways besides just trying to get one-to-one relationships with these CEOs as well. With offline industry stuff like this, are they physically based in Zurich? Or I mean, Switzerland's pretty small, so you can get to anywhere in Switzerland. They're all relatively easy to travel from and to. Try throwing an in-person event, like, you know, a AI innovation in CNC manufacturing conference, and you get this guy who's the industry experience founder on your team to speak, you speak, and it's like wildly easy to get like a free event space at a hotel. Like you don't even have to pay. I'm bringing in all these people. Maybe you spend a little bit of money, but usually I'll get like, you know, an alcohol brand involved. I will tell if it's not a hotel, hotels are less able to give free stuff, but it could be a really nice rooftop once the weather's a little bit warmer, you know, but, you know, May sounds like June is a great time for warmth in Switzerland. Anyway, so you can usually get space for pretty cheap because they're bringing in a bunch of executives into their space who might pay to rent it later. There's a lot of ways you can leverage this. Like I said, I worked with a lot of bootstrap founders. Now we've mostly only worked with funded companies, but leveraging what you're able to give them. So a physical opportunity to connect with other leaders in their space is very rare. So if you create that, you might get face to face with them. You can also invite a lot of local media to that, or maybe if not even local, like a Swiss Manufacturing Today magazine, or Swiss Manufacturing Global newsletter, or whatever it is. You get some media there. That's another reason why the venue will give it for free, and you can get extra PR articles, which also helps move along those outreach. I'm just going to rant for a little bit, but for sake of time, a lot of companies focus only on trying to get customers and do outreach on LinkedIn and on email and hitting the phones if they're a badass like you. But what they don't think about is focusing on PR and public relations and speaking at conferences, putting out white papers, talking to the media, getting on podcasts like this that are going to have more of their target audience listening. It's very unlikely that a Swiss manufacturing CEO is going to be listening to this unless you share it. Well, after you share it on your LinkedIn, they will. We will both share this, and you could take this interview, even if it's not directly targeted at your audience, and take that YouTube link when my team shares it, and you can add this into your outreach, and you can email and you can text message or whoever you want to reach those people. And if they like this type of content versus a long email versus an event, the idea is to give them all the options. Would you like to talk to me on a phone call? Would you like to come to an event? Would you like to read an article on your own? Would you like to watch a video? And if you just inundate them with all these different types of content talking about the innovation, eventually word of mouth will spread. Eventually they cannot ignore you. I have a client in an equally as like tight and lack of adoption network industry, and we've been working with them now for 3 years. We're same thing. We've gone to conferences, we put out PR, we've gotten the CEO on podcasts, and he had no LinkedIn beforehand. Now he has like thousands of followers and CEOs in the industry. It's even small. It's very small, but tech and tight. And he gets recognized now without spending significant amounts of money. And then things start to come inbound. So it literally took years, but it comes inbound. And so I think that was a long rant, but at the beginning of that, I was focused on just saying, try many different levels in the organization. The pitch changes a little bit. The guy at the very top does not care about the same problem as the CNC floor guy, but it's the money aspect. And I think that's what, at the end of the day, you have this problem that's wasting tons of money in your company, slowing down your manufacturing. We can make that go away. And we estimate with our data that it's going to save you blank number of millions. Would you like to have a chat? How can they say no? They have to be like, yeah, I'm the CEO. I'll take 10 minutes to meet with you. And then after those 10 minutes, I'm going to boss everybody below me to give you an open door into the company. I think, does that make sense?
That's a good point. I also like the event thing a lot. I mean, generally, right? I think that's something, yes, that is undervalued and also on our radar. It's somehow always think to direct sales, but in the end, right, first you have to open the channel so you can get like the right lead. So to be able to talk to the CEOs, because these are not typically people that you can basically easily just call or they receive like gazillions of emails. So how do you
totally?
But in an event, it's so easy, right? You can just pitch about how AI manufacturing works and do it very broad, very general, and then
it's just networking, really. It's like, actually, I'll go a step further. Since you have the university connections, I'm sure you can talk to someone at the university about getting a free space. And so there's no cost to you there. Then you have the university behind you. It makes it seem like a really big event. And then you invite those people to come and speak about what they're doing to innovate in their company with AI. And like, only the people that are willing to come are going to have an open mind for innovation the moment that they even get there. So and it's sponsored by you and put on by the university. So it makes your company look really big with your logo alongside the University of Zurich. And then you obviously get people go, oh my God, University of Zurich's throwing an innovation in manufacturing event, and they've invited me to come, free tickets, or they've invited me to come and speak. And then you obviously get 4 hours with all of these decision makers that you would never get. And then they go home to their company and start a conversation that opens the door and shortens the sales cycle from like that company I was just talking to about is like 1.5 year sales cycle, and it's software as well. It's in the SaaS space. It's like an analytics dashboard for an old industry in tech. And with those kinds of connections to CEOs, even like government can sometimes get involved, like the Ministry of, this is in the telecom space, Ministry of Telecom or the Ministry of Economics or something gets involved. And it's like, hey, yeah, we want you guys to focus on this, or they come to the event as well. They'll send executives, take pictures, and you get your company alongside those type of government people. I mean, at the end of the day, you're trying to put Switzerland on the map globally. And so I think that's not to be discounted. And you should do the same thing, hitting the phones with government and be like, hey, we're trying to be the innovation center for the whole rest of the world for this. We'd love to have someone from this government organization come and speak at this conference that we're putting together at the university. And then you get a government speaker, everyone will come. So I think that is unique advice I haven't given before on the podcast, because you got a unique problem. It only takes like 2 or 3 months to put together an event like that. It doesn't take a full year, and it doesn't cost anything. It's blood, sweat, and tears and time investment. So I do think that would be really interesting.
It ends up being a great party, right? And who doesn't like a great party?
Yeah, that's true. Most of the time, so I rarely do this for B2B companies. A lot of times we do it for B2C companies. And most of what we do is we scrape a huge list of influencer emails, and we invite influencers to the party that would be interested in the product. And that's it, exactly that. So then we get alcohol brands, and then we get the media to come. Media also loves free drinks. So you can get a reporter who you would never get to take to your call to come. And then after a few drinks, they're interviewing you and writing notes down. So you get a lot of benefit. But yeah, then you get a lot of content created with people. So you can have a student videographer come to the event and interview like the head of blah, blah, blah company. And then they get to talk about how excited they are to try and use your product to innovate. And then you have all these social media clips, all these media relations, all these impressions on your own social media. And so, yeah, I think the main thing to come out of it is the relationships and accelerated sales cycle. But yeah, there's a fun party as well, if you wanted to say that. It's so Swiss of you. Right? So Swiss of you. Everything's got to be a fondue party. But dude, this has been super exciting. I'm really excited for what you're doing, and excited to follow along in your journey. And really thank you for all that amazing advice. Is there anything that you want to say at the end of this? I mean, it's not
just
a
thank you.
Product.
Thanks for listening. If you stick through until now, thanks a lot for listening.
They stuck through. Trust me. This is honestly top 3 most valuable interviews I've ever done. I'm super excited to put this out. And Pascal, thank you so much for making time, brother.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Awesome.
That has been another episode of the Funded Now What podcast with your host, Andrew Lee Miller, brought to you by Growth Experts. If you liked the episode, please subscribe. And if you really liked it, please share with other founders and entrepreneurs. Thanks, and we'll see you in the next episode.